Hi, and welcome to this year's Live from the National Postal Forum in Anaheim, California. I'm Jessica Lowrance, and with me I have...
Bob Schimek from Satori Software.
Jody Berenblatt from GrayHair Advisors.
Raymond from Epicomm.
And we're here to kind of chit-chat about some hot topics that we're hearing on the Postal Forum floor, as well as through the different sessions that we know were coming, as well as talk about some of the things that are kind of leading up to this, some big announcements the Postal Service had in the general session, and kind of starting it off. The general session today I thought was very lively, right? They started off with a big music band as they had done the previous year at the Gaylord in DC, and they also kind of kicked it off really loud and proud with some of the accomplishments that they've had over. But I felt that there was like some reoccurring themes that were really a part of the opening session.
Always three.
Oh wait, I think, yeah, it must be like ticking it off on your finger or something.
Yeah.
So, well, outside of the major theme was growing together. They feel that mail obviously is a viable channel, and I think all of us sitting here agree with that statement, as
Sure.
we're
Digital
all part of
and
the
mail
industry. And then kind of the first one was bridging the gap, or building the bridge between digital and physical mail.
Yes.
Right.
And I mean, I know, Bob, as software, you're really big into the analytics of everything, and kind of what was your take on their push on that?
Yeah, they're absolutely right. It's all about, knowing as much as you possibly can about your customers, using that to really create a targeted marketing campaign that is really going to focus on boosting response rates. And yeah, combining a physical mail piece with all that digital information and a digital experience to boot for that instant gratification, that's what's going to engage the end customer and get them to do something.
So, Jody, I thought a really interesting statistic that I saw that they put up there was over 90% of their mail now has a full-service IMB. And are you guys seeing that through GrayHair and some of the stuff that you're doing?
There's a tremendous amount of IMB data that GrayHair software gets every day.
Yeah.
Yes.
They said, what, every 15 minutes now
15
it's
minutes
being pushed?
is for parcels.
Okay. Okay.
Letters and flats are usually going to get more timely once the informed visibility is implemented.
Yeah, the
Which
new
is?
platform.
Right.
They announced that launch too. When's that going to be this year?
I'm uncertain. I believe
They
that they
said
said
summer.
something summer.
Yes.
Summer takes
Summer's
3
a few months.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And whenever I hear a launch of a season, I always think of towards the end.
Right.
So maybe August, probably around
Indian
maybe
summer.
MTech. There you go.
Let's go for September.
Yes. And it'll be summer in South America, of course, in about 6 months. So
Australia's year-round, maybe.
that's it.
Yeah, but then the data will speed up, and we'll be able to actually use the geofencing that the Postal Service is putting in for parcels to be able to time the catalogs, the letters, and the other sort of monopoly products with social media and other digital messaging.
And Leo, from kind of a mail service provider perspective, do you find that through hearing all of this kind of stuff, that the Postal Service is really I heard partnering. You heard a lot of thank you for being our partner, thank you for being our customer. And do you feel that as they're rolling this kind of stuff out, that they're really kind of taking into account the partnership of it all?
Well, I think the Postal Service has always tried to position itself as being the partner of the mailing industry because, of course, we're the group who produces the material they carry. And I think that theme has been pretty consistent at the headquarters level. Where it gets a little bit dicier is when you get down to the field level, where you have the real worker bees of the world. To use the trite phrase, where the rubber meets the road. Pardon me. In that situation, you don't always have the same kind of cordiality or sense of partnership between local post offices, local facilities, local employees, and the actual mail producer who's going to that facility every day and bringing in what has to be accepted and verified, and dealing with the problems that are encountered in that activity.
Well, and it was interesting, over the course of the opening session, they talked several times about, this data being there to benefit the sender of the mail, which, in the past, it was always talking about, like, the customer, but now it is about that mail service provider, the one that is providing the data and now also is getting the data back and looking to do something with it.
I definitely felt that there was a focus on business customers much more so than the previous forums. You know, talking and all the kind of videos that they had were all either e-commerce companies or people who are using the mail for marketing or communication vehicles, that sort of thing. So, you know, that was encouraging instead of focusing on, you know, my grandmother sending a Christmas card. It was
There's
much
a recognition
more,
of the mail supply chain now that they've gone through the pains of implementing the Intelligent Mail program through the mail supply chain and this latest bit.
They also had an interesting way of combining what we normally think of as classes of mail, because in this morning's presentations, it was the contact with the customer, and they mentioned first class, they mentioned catalogs, and they didn't mention it in a way of saying, well, that's standard mail and that's first class. They mentioned it as part of an overall approach to how the sender can reach the customer and do so in an integrated, what was the term? Omni-channel?
Omni-channel.
That's the new buzzword, omni-channel fashion.
Right.
But the notion of visibility is one that I thought was interesting, because many years ago, you know, if you call the post office and said, where's my mail? The honest answer was, beats me. Because once that gray sack went into the mail stream, it was just one more gray sack out in an ocean of gray canvas. Now, because of the visibility that's been afforded by not just the IMB, but all those little gadgets on every part of the operating system, you can see where the mail is.
So this was the first introduction of something they called real mail?
What was the term they used this morning?
It was, do you see when your mail is going to be
like
delivered
real
every
time.
day?
Yeah, so, and then they talked about their kind of new digital mailbox that you'll get on your phone,
Right.
and they say so it'll become a part of kind of your daily interaction. You'll get your
Right.
weather, you'll get your emails, and you'll get your packages or what's going to be in your mailbox as text alerts. I know I get the Amazon text alerts for when I get a package shipped, because I'm a Prime member, and then also when it's delivered. So it'll be interesting to see how Postal Service is going to start kind of not so much competing, but maybe mirroring what we see from kind of leaders in that arena sort of thing. They said right now the test that they did for the mailbox, digital mailbox, was in Northern Virginia. They're going to expand it to New York City. So it'll be really interesting to see what they learn from these sort of things and what they actually ultimately roll out to everyone. So I thought that was an interesting tidbit. I mean, we had heard about it from Paul Vogel.
Yeah.
And MTAC meetings about this, and it was kind of like a postal employee thing that they were doing.
Right.
So it's interesting to see how they called it a digital platform, which I think is very interesting considering all the work Postal Vision 2020 has done on building a digital platform. So Postal Service must be reading some good books. Start throwing some terminology out there on kind of the keywords within the industry right now.
But you think, you know, it's one thing for us to say how fast technology is moving, because private enterprise can move at a very quick pace. Think about the Postal Service 5-10 years ago. None of what we heard about today was really more than just a dream, a projection.
Right.
So for an institution that is as slow to move, slow to change as it is, they've caught up pretty quickly in a lot of ways if they are now able to tell you where the carrier is, what the carrier's got, when it's going to be in your mailbox, when it was delivered.
Well, I also think they have found the benefit of data analytics, of taking it and making it actionable. And then if they're doing it internally, I think they now are seeing the benefit of releasing that information to the industry, to then mail service providers, software companies, you know, advisors, to go through and actually make that data actionable. And in making it actionable, you start driving behavior that makes you more efficient. And so I think that efficiency, even though we may be at the beginning phase of that efficiency, if you think about their network optimization program or consolidation, they talked a little bit about that. We can talk about that next. But, you know, you're seeing that the data is starting to drive decisions instead of just saying, well, I think this is best. Or, oh, that plant's the least or the best cost plant. Let's do what they're doing.
Right.
You know, they're actually having hard data.
One of the things, though, that we're going to have to wait and let the Postal Service get to, which is coming, is the timeliness of the data. You know, that's the one component that I would say is still missing yet, is that the data needs to be timely for it to be actionable, and that's what everyone is going to be looking for. You know, they want to know within 15 to 20 minutes of, okay, the carrier just drove by your mailbox. You know, getting that 2 days later does not help.
Especially when Twitter's
so you-
counting by seconds.
So you would say, like, if I were Postal and I turned back to you and I said, well, Bob, what's a good time lag or the max time lag you can have? Obviously, you want to say max because you want to do better than max.
Right.
What would you say?
I guess I would propose that, within an hour of
Okay.
it being delivered.
So that there's additional action that occurs from a business perspective after it's
Right.
delivered.
And if you chime it with you get the notification that it's been delivered, that could kick off an email to say, hey, when you get home tonight, check your mailbox for a special offer.
Yeah.
To me, if you get beyond an hour, then that immediate actionability, you start to lose it.
Right.
I wonder if the timeliness changes depending upon what time of day it is. So if your carrier delivers in the morning, maybe it's not as critical if the person is at work, whereas the carrier delivering at 5 o'clock might
at the
be a
end of the
different
day.
customer experience.
That is true.
Yeah.
Because I can say, like, for my mail delivery, mine is very, very much at the end of the day. I think I must be at the end of
Somebody
one of the routes.
has to be.
Yeah, someone has to be.
Somebody has to be.
So it's like sometimes it's just like right as I'm coming home, he's there. So that there you'd miss that opportunity, unless it was almost near immediate.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, they talk about the carrier, he scans this, scans that, and so forth. Years ago, of course, and this, I'm not telling you the tales of the school here, but years ago, a carrier, a city carrier, a rural carrier, could just run through their route nice and fast, build up a little time so they can have an hour for lunch instead of a half an hour. And they'd get back to the office at some point in the afternoon, where they figured their day was done. Now, there is a level of scrutiny available for the supervisor of the delivery operations that is just unprecedented, because now that carrier, the supervisor can see where that carrier is at any given time.
Well, they did talk about how $16 billion in the last 5 years or 6 years, they said, as a quote that Dave Williams
Savings,
said,
yeah.
of savings through route consolidations, through plant consolidations, through some of these
Retail
kind of
consolidations,
larger,
all those things.
Yeah, the retail optimization thing. So yeah, there's definitely something behind having the facts, having the figures that's driving at least, as they would call more lean processing through their Six Sigma and their, I think they all have ninja black belts and stuff.
Six Sigma is very helpful for them.
Yes, they
It's a good way
really.
for them to organize their activities.
Well, they believe a lot in process standardization, which I guess if you're running 200 some odd processing facilities and you want them all to do things as close to the same way as you possibly can. And when you have service performance scores come out as they came out for Postal Quarter 2, you can see that clearly somebody has it figured out and somebody still has to have a conversation.
Well, I mean, another big theme was reliable, predictable delivery, and we know
affordable would be good too.
Yes, I think they
and
also
maybe if you gave us more than a minute to figure out that the price is going to go up, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But through all of that, I think because of the second quarter service performance numbers that we saw and them being pretty low, and hopefully kind of, you hit rock bottom, you can only go up sort of conversation to be having, along with the crazy weather. So I'm not going to completely rule out. But I think that through the consolidations and through the fall mailing season and then into kind of a really harsh winter, the Postal Service did see holes in their processing through the consolidations that I think has now raised a level of awareness on Capitol Hill. That you're hearing a lot of folks, especially in the rural areas, a lot of senators, a lot of representatives who are really pushing it. I mean, they're having tomorrow, Tuesday, on the roundtable, a third roundtable through Senator Carper, and all it is focusing on is rural performance.
Because they're getting late fee payments for their mail delivery not getting delivered on time, right?
So, I mean, I think through all of this, there's still these kind of, even though it's great hearing those things and you really want to kind of go out and, be the cheerleader of the Postal Service when you leave one of those kind of general sessions because it sounds all really good.
Oh, wow.
And you're like, woohoo! But at the same time, I think that there is issues that people sitting here with me could pinpoint that they're lacking or need improvement upon. And so it's good to hear that because you want to hear the end game.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the data that drives all of this.
Right.
The Postal Service really hasn't. We get monthly updates of all the pre-sort data that is used to drive all of this, and we really have not gotten a clean set of data this entire year yet. And so
It's really hard.
yeah, and what will be interesting though is coming up now, July data is going to get published on June 1st, and that's going to have the next big wave of network rationalization changes. And it will be interesting to see how well, if we have another hiccup, or does the Postal Service got it under control, and we're going to continue to see steady improvement and delivery.
Are we placing bets, or are we?
Can I?
Well, based on past experience.
Well, this morning when David Williams was talking, as a matter of fact, I thought in their own way he was candid about that, saying that over the winter, the first quarter of the calendar year, they attempted to finish up some of their consolidation processes, and they probably bit off more than in hindsight they should have, because it isn't just a matter of transportation changes, it's moving people and equipment, rebidding jobs, as you pointed out in the past.
Not everybody's job changed.
So you lay all that on top of that. People are unfamiliar with operations, disruptions to the supervisory staff, and the weather. And you're going to have the kind of results that they had. But from the industry's perspective, the two-edged sword of IMB is giving us the visibility now into the service performance of the Postal Service to a degree that they probably never expected to have possible 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So now,
big black box of operations.
Yes,
I mean, when I worked there, that's what we called it. Oh, it's in operations.
Right. Now, all of a sudden, they know where the warts are, and so do we. So it's hard for them to not say, we got to fix it.
It's good for them to acknowledge that there's an issue.
That's right.
At the same time, delivery is unpredictable, so that customers that want to get their mail delivered in a particular time, particularly retailers, they're not able to do so.
But one of the things that they were stressing today, though, was that the need for consistent performance, and Again, I will be very curious to see how July goes.
Okay.
And we're going to have to continue watching, because we're not going to have weather as a factor unless, obviously a hurricane or, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But,
San Andreas fault.
It didn't
But
snow all over.
it starts with the data, and if the data isn't right that gets pumped out to the industry, then the mail doesn't go to the right place.
Right.
Correct.
Well, I mean, this summer seems to have a lot coming. I mean, so we have informed visibility being rolled out. We have the the second phase of network optimization.
Yep.
We have the price change that goes in effect May 31st.
From now.
And then we also know that there's exigency decision kind of hanging over everyone's heads.
That's another rate change.
Which will be more software changes and system changes that'll have to be communicated to the industry in a timely fashion, right?
Well, 45 days in theory, right?
Well, technically,
calendar days?
Yeah. No, unfortunately, it's not. It's true days. So the commission ordered the Postal Service, they have 45 days, and that is true days, not calendar days, in which to announce the next price change or the rollback of exigency.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, Postal Service would have to release the software changes as well as new postage statements, as well as, so at least with the rollback, there's no rate cell changes or I should say,
Rate relationship changes.
or prep changes or rule changes. It literally
Or
will
so we
be.
think.
Well, technically that would be considered a classification change, would be a 90 days. So it does
different
save us
schedule.
from having
Got
to
it.
do that.
See.
Good.
But the thing comes down to the timing.
What
Right?
day is it going to be?
So Leo, you had said the report came out from the commission.
The Postal Service issued their quarterly report on how much they've generated from agency so far, and I believe the number is $2.5 billion to date. And of course, that goes back to end of January 2014. And at one point, I would just do a very crude calculation, X number of days since then, and divide it out by the number of money.
Yeah.
And what that showed in the past is acceleration, if you will, of the rate of collection. And at the end of the last cycle, which would have been the late filing they made over the winter, I believe the date was going to be sometime in July. So if the pace of collection is increasing, then we're going to probably see mid to late July is when the $3.2 billion cup is full and they got to stop collecting additional money.
So
if we looked at, let's just say end of July is when
use
that
August
happened.
15th. It's
Back
easier
it
to
up.
do math.
Okay.
Do August 15th.
Okay,
Right.
so you back up.
Oh, no,
45
July
days.
5th. July 5th.
Then that gets sketchy. So let's just use August.
Oh, okay, we'll do August.
Our math just is a lot easier. So August 15th makes they have to file at the commission July 1.
July 1.
Yeah.
In the commission's order, the quarter in which they're going to collect it, they have to start doing bi-weekly
Bi-weekly,
reports. So
yep.
that would start July 1, July
Right.
15, August 1, August
Yeah.
15, right? Anything prior to that, you were starting to push into this
fall.
quarter.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
we're in the third quarter. They're saying
Right.
fourth quarter rollback, but anything above
It could be
August
very
15th,
early in the fourth quarter.
Of course, although I didn't see it in what came out a couple weeks ago, but in the schedule, in the mail classification schedule, there are the CPI rates.
Yes.
So the numbers that are going to be in place
are there.
are
Yes.
there.
It confused a lot of people, though. There were two sets of rates in that filing.
Yes.
And some
Yeah.
people picked up the CPI rates and didn't understand why their prices were
they
going
have to go to
down.
the second set.
And they had to recalculate everything.
Right.
Yep.
Thank goodness PostCom puts out the charts correctly.
So
Well, speaking of correctly, so the Postal Service, if we're going to stay on prices for a few minutes, the Postal Service did get this rate case, the CPI rate case of the, what number are we up to now?
was it 1.966 was the
or
CPI?
1.696. I think it's
Something like
696.
that.
Dueling sixes.
No, it was 1.966%.
Okay.
That's 2 for 1.
See, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm bad. I'm out of here, right? I'm struck out. No, so they
We should do
actually,
pricing.
well,
Put a moment.
Go back and fix that.
so the price change got remanded back twice. So the Postal Service originally filed in January prior to the previous PMG retiring, and they were going to implement April
26th.
26th.
Yep.
And they got remanded twice. The second remand was, hey, you can no longer implement on the 26th because
Right.
your rates aren't. So then there was uncertainty in the industry because we didn't know if they were going to do two separate, because first class mail and special
First,
services
there was
were
going to be two
approved.
separate ones.
Right.
And then
right.
it was periodicals, package services, and standard mail weren't approved.
And then I'm going to be grateful the Postal Service listened to that not being a wonderful idea.
Yes. And so
collapsed it
then they
into law.
delayed it to May 31st
Yep.
with, quote unquote, the correct prices submitted.
3 times the
And-
charm.
That's right.
And it has been approved by the commission.
Yes.
And we do know there were some bound printed matter issues where they had to fix a few
There was
rate
a last
cells.
minute, last minute correction, but it didn't reset the 45-day clock.
Right.
Which is odd.
Right. But if you look at the final set of prices, there were, if you go through the rate cells, there were a lot of individual changes, up a tenth of a cent, down a tenth of a cent,
In order to make
in
the
order to make
yeah.
everything work out, make the math work out.
Right. So when they remanded it back and the Postal Service fixed it and they resubmitted it, it wasn't like, oh, there were 6 rate cells that were wrong. It was like 600 that were wrong. In the sense of they had to tweak almost every single one in order to get the math to work to
But they
comply
didn't
with the
post
law.
an Excel spreadsheet on their website, right? So you could just download it and have the updates?
Yeah, I don't know how they do that. I know we put out charts, but I don't know.
Yeah, we put out charts.
Yeah, I
You should
don't-
join one of our associations.
I'm a member of both of yours.
Oh, okay. In that case, you have the charts.
Yes.
There you go.
So we've covered pricing. We know network optimization. There has been some heat around the service performance. We also know that July is going to be a big month for the phase 2.
Yep, the next
You know,
wave.
first it was supposed to be April, then they kind of pushed all those back because of issues I think they were having with service over the winter months. So then they literally they had only 4 consolidated in April, and then they moved the rest, which was like 79 or 76 or something like that, consolidations happening in July where certain
And
operations.
it wasn't that long ago that some of those facilities were still changing as far as
Yes.
whether
Yes.
they're going to implement or where they're pending, and so we're getting down to the wire, and they're still kind of moving
Tweaking it
things
a little
around.
bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we know that's coming. We know this exigency's hanging over
We
our
don't know what
head.
the pricing will be for 2016. Like, will that be
Or-
January?
Or when? Yeah, when?
When is important.
Would they go to for a full
May
year?
again?
How
do we
I would
budget?
argue that I think the industry would very much like to get away from January. It's with the holidays, releasing software right around the new year and then implementing at the end of January.
But then they would
Yeah.
say they do it for competitive packages or competitive services, shipping services, because that's when UPS and FedEx do it. So they want to do it at one time because Postal Service, to there are many strengths.
Yeah.
Software rollout is not one of them, and so it kind of it's huge resource intensive for
Well,
them
I
to
think
do
after,
2 rollouts.
after this last case, I think people would just be happy to have them file it once and get it right the first time. Because you've seen price changes, and I've seen price changes before you came out of school, and it was I wouldn't say shocking, but it was clearly a very different experience this time for an institution that has been doing price changes since 1971 through a process of documentation and legal filing and whatnot to really get it so far wrong. And I think what it says is there had been a continual lack of attention to the critical elements of the Postal Service's intellectual infrastructure, where they let their classification and pricing and maybe even legal teams lose a lot of the people who had experience, who had competency. You know, some would say because the people at the very top of the organization that oversaw pricing and marketing and classification failed to appreciate those units and failed to offer the correct staffing support, let things dribble away to nothing, and then try to push this thing through with inexperienced people.
So what was it, that, or was it maybe a new PRC commissioner that is towing maybe a little bit tighter line on making sure
it's
that
too. It's
both.
that too. Yeah, I think it's both, because
Exactly.
now if you have people who don't know what they're doing, or did I say that out loud? Who probably
I did not. Special note: I did not say it out loud.
who probably don't have the same level of competency and experience as their predecessors, trying to push the rate case through in an accelerated timeline.
Well, see, I'm going to take it even a step higher, and again, this is my personal opinion. I think
That's
that
how I started that fire letter. Just
Yes.
go more along.
it was. I think, as an organization, the strategic foresight of knowing how prices interact with your end customer, whether it's a service provider or the ultimate mail owner, disconnecting those two and not seeing the importance that pricing plays in the role of the industry, it was a strategic shortcoming, not any individual, but as a whole, the organization let down the industry by not recognizing how big of a role pricing plays.
Yeah, they
Right,
don't,
so I
don't
think
think they
that's-
understand the pricing signals
Correct.
and how the industry reads
And I
those
think
signals.
there's also a very siloed approach. So you have operations making all of these efficiency changes, or what they deem efficiency
Yes.
changes, and then you have pricing making pricing decisions based on not those decisions. So it's like operations want you to do this, but pricing's telling you to go down the road, sort of thing.
Right.
So I think that there needs to be a more strategic view from a postal perspective
Yes.
on pricing.
And this
So-
sort of followed an absence of dialogue between the Postal Service and
agree.
the industry regarding pricing.
I agree.
Many of the leaders in the industry side wanted to have a conversation with the Postal Service about the pricing signals and what we needed in the best interest of commerce and business.
And I also think that, kind of back to Leo's point, that maybe folks in certain roles weren't able to have those conversations, so then they weren't had at all.
Yeah.
Or they were had with the wrong people, and then it
Right.
wasn't conveyed
So
correctly.
we need
I
to
mean,
talk.
Well,
I definitely think there needs to be a revisit
it's
of that
not a
relationship.
situation where pricing, costing, is as it is in the private sector. It's a whole different environment here. It's a regulated monopoly.
Right.
There's an expectation for a lot of cost-based data when you set your prices. It isn't just market-driven prices, as it is in competitive products. So you have to have the people and the experience in the organization who can take what operations wants, what
Right.
customers need, build it all together around some sensible costing data to yield a pricing structure that gets you where you want to be, makes you money, and sends the right signals. And
Well, and if you're doing initiatives on operationally to reduce costs, and you got to put the mail where it's going to be most efficient, and so
Right.
that's going to drive different behavior, and the mailing industry needs the signals that says go there. you know,
Right.
So
sort
the
of thing.
conflict in the signals was on the flat side, right? There was no letter side conflict.
Well, I just think that, and I agree, I don't think there was specific,
Right.
shaped, base, that sort of thing. I just think as a strategy going forward, they need to look at what they operationally want to achieve and how they're going to set the price to get them there.
And it's
Right.
also a situation where the automation of the letter stream is far more mature than the automation of the
Yes,
flat stream.
agreed.
Yeah.
So in some ways, they're still trying to figure out how to make these behemoths they bought, the FSS machines,
Effective.
effective. Because you figure they were ordered back when things were good, not before volume fell off the table.
Well, and it's going to be interesting too, because there's a wave of changes coming with FSS, with the price change, especially with the new FSS specific price.
Sure.
But then also now looking ahead to the next year, there is another MTAC work group that is keyed up and actively working on additional changes above and beyond.
Like 16 and beyond.
Yeah,
almost.
yeah, where there are going to be more preparation changes, and it might be interesting to see, do they want to change the way they've signaled prices? I don't know.
But that's yet another roller coaster that we're on.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of roller coasters, I think it's really
Speaking of which,
I think it's really important to note what was not discussed at today's general session.
True.
oh yeah,
So for
Nothing
the
about
last
legislation?
3 or 4 years, I felt like, force-fed legislation or need for legislation for so long, and it wasn't even mentioned once. Their
Right.
deputy PMG, who is their legislative guru,
Is he
The
here?
point man.
he literally came out to
he
hand
was
out
there.
an award.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was it. And
Yeah.
I think Ron's great at his legislative role. It's just there seemed to be a lack of legislative discussion.
Right.
So what does that say?
No hope for a new law.
Well,
Or is status quo acceptable?
I don't think
or-
it's acceptable, but I thought that Megan was negotiating behind the scenes.
I think the difference is Pat probably wanted Pat had his agenda.
Yeah.
He says this is what we need, and I'm not going to stand there and start nickel diming it to take this and this off the table.
He wanted it all. Yeah.
And I think at the time, given the political climate on the Hill, he had a sympathetic leader in the Senate. So you had that consistency. Now, of course, you've had changes in the party alignment with different people in charge, a different PMG, pardon me, who probably does not have to have it all. Who probably wants to say, these are the important things, let's talk about the important things,
Right.
and see what everybody can agree upon, and get something through that way.
Well, I mean, there's also, there's been this big kind of spotlight shown on the service performance.
Oh,
And
yes.
so if you show up to a round table or you show up to start negotiating legislation, what's the first thing you're going to say? Stop your consolidations. And if they stop consolidations, then all of a sudden this big reduction in cost that they've been planning kind of gets put on freeze. And so if they've had these plans for a while now, I think there might be a little bit of a unwillingness to say, like, so Pat may have said, here are my points. She may be saying, well, I'm not doing anything until I know this is done. So she may be taking her own hard line.
Sure.
And it may just be, well, we're not going to talk about this until I know I'm at least more done than not.
But what's always interesting is listen to the political comments that are made, and they tend to come from one side of the aisle, for one
Yeah.
thing. Not that one in particular, but a lot of it has to do with concerns over service to the rural areas. Look at the service performance scores. Some of the worst scores were in the urban districts.
Right.
Chicago, Triborough, New York.
Houston.
Those are the worst scores. The better scores were actually in some of the more rural areas. Portland, Oregon. Alaska had good scores. So it isn't. I don't think it's a situation where you can just go knee-jerk to the consolidations and say, well, that's what's wrong, and you can't do that anymore. Plus, they always emphasize, well, we don't want to have the loss of any, quote, good-paying postal jobs, unquote. First of all, nobody in the Postal Service is ever put in the street because of a consolidation.
Right.
And a vacant position is eliminated. A person is not fired. The second thing is, if you're trying to save costs, you don't save costs by keeping people on staff to do work you don't need to have done because there's no mail to work on anymore. So the very selfish political arguments transparently don't understand the economics of the Postal Service and why.
Well, we are coming into an election year.
Oh,
So we have
good.
to write our letters. Plus, creating first
But there
class
was
mail.
this call. Wasn't there a call to undo the service standard changes?
Oh, yes.
Can they go
Oh, yes.
backwards now?
Congress can put their fingers into whatever they want to put their fingers
Right,
into.
but can the Postal Service actually
Well,
do
I mean,
so-
once you get rid of the facility, you can't go backwards because you can't
Yeah, right. You
reopen
can't
a
put-
facility.
You can't rebuild Humpty Dumpty in this
Yeah,
case.
Yes.
right.
Because the whole network was built around service performance, overnight service. Now you've unwound that.
Right.
You can't reopen 200 facilities.
Well, if you think about the legislative climate, we know that there's a presidential election, and nothing is gone. I mean, I think everybody and their mother's running for president in primary. So
I'm going to file next week.
half the Senate is going to be campaigning.
Sure.
Right? And then the other half
They're going to
is
want their
not.
mail delivered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So
But will they put IMBs on their
I think as you
campaign?
go
I hope so.
through, you really can't have too much done in 16. So it's literally we're winding down in 15 already. We have summer recess in August, and we know Postal Service seems to be kind of towing the line of, well, let's see how this, phase 2 finally gets rolled out. So if you're not really talking about anything until after Labor Day, we're already going to have an exigent decision by then, and we'll know
We
where
hope-
we stand.
We hope so.
Yes,
Right,
we keep
yeah.
Through
looking
either
every
the
Friday and
courts
Tuesday.
or through the PRC process that's been laid out. So either way, I mean, a lot of the things that are kind of hanging out there will kind of be resolved by fall mailing season, and so it's one of those that, do we just kind of sit on our hands for status quo and then revisit after the rate cap review, see what the commission thinks of the rate
Yep.
cap, those sorts of things, or do you try to piecemeal something or do a rider to do a few quick things here and there if it's allowed, or if, some people get off their high comprehensive horse
know.
and do some other streamlined stuff. It's just,
Right. I think
Really
Senator Carper
interesting.
still
Talk
wants.
about uncertainty.
Senator
Yes.
Carper still wants to have a comprehensive bill, I think,
Yes.
and you can see the way he's going. You know, the people he's bringing in, of course, to his hearings and whatnot. He's still carrying that
Yes,
water.
very much so.
I don't know if he's still getting that message from the Post Service though, or if there's more flexibility about a deal that isn't as comprehensive, but that hits the high spots,
Yeah.
hits the important things.
So if the
Well,
businesses and the unions agreed, it might be okay.
There you go. If they all go up there hand in hand together.
Yeah.
Right,
Be interesting.
But the note you made earlier about, well, maybe it makes sense that Megan is waiting until we get through July, that the last big wave of consolidations occur, and then she would be willing to start pushing
Yeah.
legislation in
Right.
that conversation, because the plants are then now out of the picture.
Yep.
Hopefully.
It's definitely uncertain times. There's certainty and then there's uncertainty of kind of
The
all around.
certainty of
That's-
uncertainty.
Certainty of uncertainty.
And
And that's why
so-
we're all employed.
In
I mean-
data, in delivery.
That's right.
Yeah, kind of in wrap up of what we're hearing, yes, no legislation. Yes, no exigency. Yes,
Right.
no plant consolidations. Yes, no software updates. Yes, no. So, if anything, we would say stay tuned. Obviously,
Yes.
work with, your service providers, work with your postal reps to
Your
really.
association.
Your
Execs.
associations,
Yes,
there you go.
absolutely. To kind of
MTAC.
Yes,
truly
yes.
understand what's going on and stay in the loop, because it's constantly changing,
Yes,
and
it
there's always new information.
Right.
So reach out to any of us if you have questions, and through GrayHair, Satori,
Epicomm.
Epicomm.
Sorry, I almost called you five
PostCom.
different things. And then PostCom. We're definitely here to help. So thank you for staying tuned, and we'll be around on the floor with you
Yes.
guys.
There we go. We'll be here.
Yeah,
Thanks.
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 Okay.